Hey kids, what time is that?
Hey everybody, Keith here from GeekTime TV with another excerpt from the GeekTime Vault. About a year ago, we posted a deep dive into a three-part series we recorded as our old podcast, Pizza and Pop Culture, covering the first era of the rock band Kiss. And I've been remiss to get to the other two chapters. With their recent final performance at Madison Square Garden, a show I was able to attend, I decided to dig back in and pull out the other two chapters, add some visuals to it, and put them here for you. These were recorded in 2020 with myself and my fellow good friend Kiss fans, Mike Savenelli and George Alexopoulos. We've been friends since the 6th or 7th grade. And we just decided to sit down and just wing it and talk about our love of all things Kiss. We were highly critical as well, so it's not just a big love fest. So would love to know what you guys think of things we cover here. Please leave a comment below, like, share, and subscribe. And without further ado, part 2 of our three-part series covering the years 1982 through 1998. All right, hello, and welcome to our second volume, I guess you'd call this, right? Second volume. Want to go with that?
Yes.
Of Pizza and Pop Culture Special Edition, The Kiss Years. Ooh. I'm here with our special toppings again this week. Mike Savenelli, the Baron himself.
Hello again.
And our stalwart, George Alexopoulos.
Hello, hello.
And I'd like to thank Eastside Pizza for sponsoring the room here. This is awesome. It's cavernous.
Socially distanced.
Yes.
Perfect.
We are social differencing here. So just get the housekeeping out of the way, and then we can have some fun here. Follow us on all our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Pizza Pop Culture. Also our website, pizzapopculture.com. And, you know, if you like this show, you'll like some others that we listen to, like Pinto Comics, Ghosts of the Stratosphere, 4:30 Movie, Inglorious Trexperts. So check them out as well. So here we are. So last time we covered the origin of Kiss in the first decade or so of their existence, and the pitfalls, the pratfalls, the successes. You know, we forgot to talk about Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, which was kind of symptomatic of the solo albums and everything that was going on at that time. But
the high point.
Yes, the high point. I remember I had to take a nap so I could stay up and watch it. And
Yeah, never a favorite endeavor of the band of mine. So, yeah, I don't have anything really even to say about it, quite honestly.
Rip and destroy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember trying to convince myself as a then 9-year-old that it was awesome, even though in my brain I was like, oh no, what is this?
This is not awesome.
Right, but it was Kiss, so I had to pretend it was, right?
Can't forget Ace's double in that freaking movie.
Or Michael Bell doing Peter Criss's voice. Michael Bell, who did Bumblebee on the Transformers, Bruce Banner on the Hulk show.
Really?
Yeah, it was
Jeez.
dubbed in those lines.
Hilarious.
It really is. So we left off with Creatures of the Night, and you were saying, Mike, on the last show that like everything about their look and feel and the vibe, everything was perfect again, except it really wasn't.
Right.
And the tour didn't go very well. They were selling, what, 4,000 seats in 15,000 seat arenas, and it just didn't work out.
Right.
Vinnie Vincent was on the tour.
Yeah, it didn't work because fans weren't connecting with it, and there's no reason why they shouldn't have, because it was a great album.
And the stage show with the big tank, and like everything was back to basics. They were back in just black leather.
Yeah.
You know, it should have worked, but it clearly didn't. So
the damage was done from the 3 prior albums and Peter leaving the band and all that stuff. So people just left the building. And I remember Gene saying, in more recent times, but you can use this analogy with Creatures of the Night, where Gene said in like, you know, the year 2000, he said, you know, we can write the next Let It Be and nobody would care right now. And it was almost that same kind of mentality then. You know, people, you know, you're just done, you're done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I can see that. And just for me personally, I was done with them. I was done with them in 1980. MTV is starting to really catch its stride at this point. 1982, 83. You had the Thriller video with Michael Jackson, kind of blew the lid off of what this channel could potentially do, you know. And the band that was probably made for MTV completely misses the boat, right? The most visual band in history misses the boat on MTV, but they do take advantage of it. And they go on with J.J. Jackson. They go live and quote unquote wash their faces and take the makeup off. How did you guys feel about that?
I mean, I think it was so anticlimactic at the time because the band wasn't popular. So it wasn't like people were, you know, excited because nobody really was a fan anymore besides the diehards, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And nobody really cared about seeing Eric Carr or Vinnie Vincent without makeup on. You know, they wanted to see Ace Frehley and Peter Criss and Paul and Gene. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think it was a great career move at the time. They made the right choice times a billion because Lick It Up started their ascent to keeping it going. You know, taking the makeup off, if they kept it on, it was just going to be same old, same old. So I think it attracted a whole new set of, you know, younger fans who the band now looked like other bands that they liked.
Right. For me, I didn't even realize Ace had quit because I was done listening to him. I'd seen the Creatures. I love the T-shirt, by the way. Mike's wearing the Creatures album cover. So Ace is on the album cover, even though he had nothing really to do with the album at all.
Right.
And he in the video for I Love It Loud.
Right, he did the video for I Love It Loud. So I had no idea he was gone. I didn't realize that was Vinnie Vincent, and they put his picture. First, they showed them with the makeup, and then they had him revealed. And I was like, well, who the hell's that guy?
I've never seen him with the makeup on.
At first,
I don't care to see him without the makeup on.
Right, right. They put him up. He's got the Ankh thing, you know, and I'm like, the Egyptian whole thing going on. And I'm like, what? Did Ace change his make? Like, what? I was so baffled by that. I didn't understand. I didn't know there was a new guy.
I remember looking at the album cover. I'm like, and I knew instantly that's not Ace.
The Lick It Up album cover?
Yeah, I remember looking at it and like, that was terrifying.
I saw the unmasking. And then when I realized that they had two new guys, I was really done.
Yeah.
Like, I saw the unmasking and went, oh, these guys have just sunk to the ultimate low. Now Ace is gone, too. Like, I didn't even give Lick It Up a chance. So that was for me. I didn't get back into him until I saw Heaven's on Fire.
Right.
But the Lick It Up album cover, Vinnie Vincent was apparently, like, photoshopped in there. I guess they had to take his picture at a different time. Was he already causing problems?
He has that awesome wig for the
wig
for the cover too.
Right.
He never looked like that again.
Right.
I know. Well, in the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, he's wearing something up there.
Well, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, we'll do a special edition on the. We should do a Kiss spin-off, like what all the guys that left Kiss and what they did.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, let's talk about Vinnie Vincent for a bit though, because he's this much maligned, deservedly so. I mean, he's the most self-destructive person. I think he makes Ace and Peter look like choir boys. Right?
And the funny thing about Vinny for me, and I was thinking about him before this. I personally love Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up. I think that those two albums are. I think Lick It Up's really the last really good Kiss album.
Yeah.
In my opinion. After that, there was a lot of good songs, but there was never a really great album or good album.
You're absolutely right.
And I think if those two albums actually, if you combined the two of them into one album, you might have one of the greatest hard rock or heavy metal albums ever.
Of all time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And definitely maybe even the best Kiss album. So the guy was a huge part of those two albums, writing a ton of them. Every song that I like, a lot. It's in my top 3 on the album. You look, and he's the co-writer.
Right.
Co-wrote every song.
Yeah, and then the same thing with Revenge. I mean, he wrote... So the stuff in between Lick It Up and Revenge, which in my opinion was not on the same level as Lick It Up or Creatures of the Night, the guy wasn't involved. So, like, what's the common denominator there of, he wrote these songs, and now he's not in the band, and the songs aren't as good without him in the band.
Right.
So even though he's a lunatic and... his playing live and all that stuff was all questionable. Somehow the writing, the guy is able to you know, write a melody and you know create an earworm and get people to pay attention. I mean, when I first heard "Lick It Up," the song, that's when I got really back into him again. I said to you guys last time, I heard "I Love It Loud." I was babysitting 2 doors down.
Yeah.
On the hi-fi, you know, and I heard "Lick It Up" on, you know, the car radio or something with my father, and immediately was like, I love this, you know. And I was like 12 or something.
Right.
And again, you know, Paul singing was always drew me in, and you know, his singing in that song, and the song is obviously a catchy song, and so that's when, yeah, I was kind of back in head first, and you know, went on for years after that.
Yeah. Would it be safe to say that Vinny might have saved them, as odd as it sounds?
I think he was definitely part of it. I don't know, you know, we don't know the whole, you know, around, you know, the global story there, right? But I think he was definitely part of it, and it can't be denied. And I think that those 2 albums at that time were just more of what I think they wanted to do, as opposed to pandering to what they thought wanted to be heard, which is why I think they're great albums. And I also think that Gene, after "Lick It Up," was non-existent until "Unholy," and Gene stopped singing about Rock and Roll Hell and War Machine and Young and Wasted and Not for the Innocent. And I was listening to the other albums for this, and every song is "Ooh baby, ooh baby," ooh, and all the you know, the mean demon dirty guy, I'm gonna rip your heart out, and was long gone.
Yeah.
You know, so he really fell off after that.
Right.
And then, you know, so anyway, I don't want to steal all the time. So George, go ahead.
Not for all of us. I like a lot of the Gene songs from Animalize and Asylum. I'm in the definite minority here.
Well, some of them are pretty good. Secretly Cruel jumps out immediately to me, but...
And I'm not saying that I don't like the songs. I'm just saying, like, "Lick It Up" and "Creatures" is just so much better.
Yeah, I agree. I think in Michael James Jackson's production, it was very raw. It had that raw early 70s kind of feel to them again, that just crunchy rock and roll. And I think that really helped, because taking off the makeup was definitely a gimmick that got them re-recognized to the general public. But if the album that supported that effort was bad, it would have fallen flat and they would have been done. It would have been over, like over for them.
You got to admire them for, like, even like the Animalize tour, how much the set list, there's only like 3 songs before Creatures.
Right.
And like they were definitely making strides to change, you know. And it's too bad they couldn't continue that, you know. I don't know how the Asylum tour and how I think Hot in the Shade they went back, or Crazy Nights.
I mean, Gene's lack of presence obviously was huge, and it's so, in retrospect now, as a 48-year-old person, and then being, you know, 14, it was a whole different, you know, looked a lot differently to me now that it looked then. So when you go back now and you look at it, and it's so obvious that Gene was still pretty great, in my opinion, on Creatures and "Lick It Up," and then wasn't very great after that for quite some time, and self-admitted it, you know, after the fact. So that really hurt the band, but the timing was right for a frontman like Paul, because that was, you know, the in thing, you know, a you know, kind of, you know, the kind of asexual type stuff.
The androgynous.
All that stuff. You go back, and it was perfect timing. And then the themes of the songs, which now, in my opinion, are absolutely cringeworthy. and
that's
now,
the way they were.
Yeah, of course. And like now, I wouldn't go if I wanted to find get somebody who, you know, Kiss sucks. I hate Kiss. Blah 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 blah. Why do you like them? I'm not going to play Crazy Nights or Hot in the Shade or even Asylum. I'm going to play. If I played tracks from
Hotter Than Hell,
well, no, or Creatures, or Lick It Up, I'm saying,
okay.
If you're a real like rock fan, you're probably gonna like a lot of that stuff, or accept it. And then when you go into the albums after that, now you can be ridiculing, and it's deserved. And that's kind of the problem there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we look through the discography, we'll see. I mean, it clearly became Chase Bon Jovi, you know, at some point. And it's kind of funny when you take a step back and look at that era, the 80s. All the bands that Kiss started to chase were bands that were heavily influenced by Kiss.
Right.
It was the whole Darth Vader thing, you know, when I left you, I was but the learner, now I'm the master. You know, all of a sudden Kiss is looking at all the kids that grew up listening to them taking over. Right. And they were chasing chasing the youngins, if you will.
I mean, the one thing about it that's hilarious to me is that Paul Stanley was the one that really found Desmond Child.
Yeah.
And wrote "I Was Made for Loving." You know, the guy was playing with, who was he with? Was it the Plasma? Not Plasma. No.
His own band.
What was his band? I forgot the name of his band.
Was he with Bolton for a while?
There's people out there that are going to be screaming at us.
Yeah,
when they listen to
probably.
this.
I forgot.
But Paul was the one that, you know, discovered him playing clubs in the 70s from my recollection. And now he became, you know, everybody else's favorite songwriter, and Kiss was sucking wind to keep up.
Right.
It's pretty ironic.
Yeah, he wrote such, he was able to clone just about every, like he just kept recloning the same songs, the same style. Every song had like the same beats and the same tropes, and it became a top 10 hit over and over and over for everybody. From Bon Jovi to Aerosmith to you name it.
Yeah.
So Vinnie Vincent washes out because he was a nightmare to deal with, and there's some great clips on YouTube of him playing on the Creatures tour, or even the Lick It Up tour, where he was just going off on these rampaging solos, and you can see like Paul Stanley just staring him down, and then get on the mic and say, well, we're going to resume the normal show now. Vinny's done with his show, and it's just amazing like how rogue this guy was going. They thought they had nightmare problems with Peter Criss and Ace Frehley. This guy took it to a whole new level. So they go out and find Mark St. John, who was the most odd choice, I think. But again, symptomatic of the times where shred guitarists were in vogue.
Yeah.
So Kiss decides to go get a shredder, and they were always a blues-based band. They never did that metal thing. And now they bring in an Yngwie Malmsteen knockoff, right?
That guitar solo on I've Had Enough is out of control. It's like, I love the song. I think it's a great Chris song, but that solo is just too much.
By the way, it was Desmond Child and the Rogue in 1975. I just wanted to clarify that. I looked it up. So that's where he.
And I called Vinnie Vincent the Rogue.
Mark St. John, I mean, was a huge. I mean, the fact that they were able to recover from it still, again, it's befuddling to me that these guys were able to come back from making horrible mistakes, in my opinion. You know, when Paul Stanley has said over and over again, it's something that's stuck in my head that Mark would play a solo and I would love it, and I'd say play it again. He couldn't do it. Play it again.
Right.
I mean, that's a real issue.
Right.
You know,
he was freelancing constantly.
Yeah, he was just making it up as he went, and there was nothing was written down or charted. You know.
Right.
82, Ace is on his way out. 83, Vinnie Vincent. 84, Mike St. John. 84, Bruce Kulick.
Yeah, 4 guitarists in 2 years.
In 2 years.
And then on the heels of 3 Faceplant albums, 4 if you count Creatures, and taking their makeup off. So all this happens in a span of 2 years.
That is.
And somehow they're still around, right?
Just think of their first album to Animalize is 10 years.
10
years.
By sheer twist of fate, and I don't know how long they would have kept Mark in the band, honestly. Just because, not for any reason behavioral-wise, but the fact that his style just didn't match what they were doing. That Animalize album is so just, it's very dated.
Plus, he never co-wrote. I mean, he only had one album, but he never co-wrote with the guys. Like
right.
Bruce from Asylum started writing with the guys right away.
Right.
Maybe he just meshed better, you know.
It was definitely like a hired gun situation.
Yeah, it seemed it.
And to the point that you said before, it was 1984 was when Van Halen was the biggest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
Hot for Teacher, Panama.
Right.
Jump, even though it's not a guitar song, but Eddie Van Halen was what is all that mattered.
True.
And so Paul's inclination was, let's get a guy like that. This is what the kids like.
Sure. I mean, when you look at other guitarists that were around at that time, you got Warren DeMartini and Rat, who's a shredder. You've got George Lynch and Dokken, who's a shredder. Everybody started coming up with these hot shot ripping guitar players, right?
Yeah.
So Kiss had to have one, and clearly, I mean, that could also be whoever was, the management. I think Paul and Gene were self-managing at this point, right? Coyne was already gone.
Yeah.
And I just think they were trying to find a way to fit into the new rock and roll, the new heavy metal scene, if you will.
And I do like, the Paul songs on there.
So do I.
I like one Gene song on there. I know George likes more than me, but that's when Gene went to singing these lyrics about women that are just, I mean, listening to them yesterday now as a 48-year-old guy.
Burn Be Burn.
I mean, but even like the other songs, like,
Oh
the lyrics and the verses are just like, dude, I know you can do better than this because you just did better than this the last 10 years. So the lyrics really became almost an afterthought to what he was doing, and the themes of the songs were just like. It's hard now, as an older person, to take it seriously on any level. And Kiss already has been accused of their whole career of not being able to take them seriously.
Well, true.
You know?
And let's face it, their target audience were 14 to 25-year-old men,
right? And that's what they're going to say.
Tons of disposable income, and that's who they were trying to appeal to.
Right.
But you're right. Gene was definitely just cookie. It was all cookie cutter, templated. He's probably writing them out while he's taking craps between takes on his movies, and sitting on the can, and he's like, "Oh, here's a good one, burn, bitch, burn." Wrote it in 3 minutes.
I mean, when you go back and you look at it, I mean, again, Paul would write one hit song, great song, an album to keep it going. I mean,
right.
Lick It Up, Heaven's on Fire. Like Heaven's on Fire was an immediate, super made for MTV, catchy rock song that is fun but not stupid in my opinion. Versus some of these other songs, like it's the same concept,
yes,
but doing it in a way that isn't like
a little more subversive.
Yeah, like there's more subtleties there,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
So like that's what I'm interested in with them,
right?
And music, and rock and roll music, and not being so overt now,
It's funny. The Heavens on Fire video is the one that got my attention again.
Same here.
And when I saw that and heard that song, I said, "Oh, now this sounds like old Kiss." To me, I was like, "Oh, this is good." So I got reinterested in them. And of course, in the video, who's this guy? Mark St. John. It's like, who another new guy? So what's going on with Kiss? But it didn't hinder me enough to get reinvested in them and start looking into the back catalog that I had missed and getting interested. And that's when I found Lick It Up too and went, wow, Lick It Up is just great. So Mark St. John, though, he gets his arthritis, or
right.
He had some weird
arthritis syndrome in his hand.
Yeah, and his hand would swell up, and he couldn't move his fingers. And so on the tour, they had Bob Kulick's brother, Bruce. And it's funny that Bob Kulick put so much time and energy into Kiss, and never got a shot because he was bald. And it's kind of ironic because Gene's bald, but throw a wig on the guy.
I'm sure there's other factors there.
I'm
stylistically
sure.
And all that type of stuff. He didn't fit per se and all that stuff. In their eyes, I mean,
maybe, but I mean, the stuff he played on the Alive 2 original tracks, the side 4 of Alive 2,
Paul's solo album,
sounded great. And Paul's solo album, he had the Ace feel. I mean, I didn't know until I was older that wasn't Ace on Alive 2, except for Rocket Ride.
Yeah.
His Larger Than Life solo is still one of the best solos I think ever. Great. But anyway, they grabbed Bruce and they would take him on the road with them, and then him and Mark were alternating shows for a while and splitting shows in half. It was just bizarre until they finally just said,
"Did that happen?
Mark, go home, get yourself well, and we're going to go with Bruce." And then Mark never came back.
I mean, I think from my recollection, Mark played to your question, George. Mark played like a handful of shows.
Yeah.
And Bruce was there at the same time. And then when Mark couldn't do it, Bruce stepped in and Mark would watch from off stage.
Right. Yeah.
And then Mark just never came back.
I think there was one or two where they actually had to split it in half. Right. Mark would start the show and his hand would tighten up.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. I could be wrong about that. Again, we're spitballing. We don't have any research in front of us or anything. This is just from our rotting brains.
Which are definitely rotted out. There's not much left. I will say that George and I would sing Heavens on Fire walking from the bus to our house.
You used to alter the lyrics.
I did.
Yeah,
there's a lot of lyrical changes.
To this day, when I hear that song, I sing your lyrics.
I'm sorry.
Even when I go see him in concert, I sing your lyrics.
I'm so sorry, and Jesus has to forgive me.
But
for those lyrics.
the irony of your lyrics are exactly what the song means,
and exactly what I'm railing against the other songs.
Right.
But as a 14 or 13
If Gene
year
wrote
old,
Heavens on Fire, he would have used your lyrics.
Exactly. But, so my point, right, is you have a guy who's like 35 years old writing lyrics like that, and I'm 13 writing.
Right.
It's not that good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I remember walking up from the bus with George singing the song, and then I also remember going into my family room at that house. And before, again, any technology, and I never had any, I was never at the forefront of any of that stuff. But I remember having my not the tape recorder I talked about on the last show, but my new one, which still was a piece of crap. It was still just one speaker, but now it stood up with like, a clock or whatever. And I remember bringing it into the family room, and when the Heavens on Fire video would come on when we come home from school, hitting the big red record button, and I recorded the song on a cassette.
No kidding.
Off the TV, because the album I don't think was out yet, and they were playing the song all the time, promoting it before the album came out.
Right.
So I wanted to be able to play it whenever I want. That's how I ended up, really loving Kiss. And again, it goes back to, Paul's intro to the song and his whole performance in the song is what I love about Kiss.
Which is interesting because the yodel at the front of that song was just him warming up.
Right.
Yeah.
And the producer, Paul Stanley, liked it and tacked it on the front of the. Paul and Gene produced the album.
Right.
Well, but I think Paul produced the album.
Right.
Gene popped in between dailies on his film.
It was funny because it's funny when we read the books, right? We talked about how Mark St. John would get in a car, a limo, or a cab and go from Gene's studio to Paul's studio. Gene and Paul had no idea what each other were doing, really. And
they were on opposite coasts, weren't they?
I don't know. I think they were both in New York working at the same time, but in different studios. I remember reading these stories.
I thought Gene was out in L.A. making movies and he was recording out there.
I could be wrong, but I remember specifically Mark was working with one of them and would lay down solo playing and then go to the other studio where the other guy was writing songs.
It would be like in another building?
They weren't writing together at all, those guys, period. I mean, it was like 2 albums.
Right. Well, it sounds like 2 albums, Animalize. It's like 2 different albums.
Right. So they weren't even... The one thing, though, that I love about that era that I do enjoy a lot is the background vocals during that period.
Oh, the quadruple tracking on
I mean, when you have a Gene song that might be, a C+.
Blasé.
And then Paul comes on the chorus singing backup.
Right.
It just changes the whole thing. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of that going on where they contributed a lot of great identifiable background vocals to each other's tracks during that time, more than I think they did before or after.
Right. The Animalize has a bombastic mix. Like, it's really produced well, I think. Especially from guys who really never produced an album before, Paul and Gene. It just has a really rich, booming sound to it. I remember when I put it on, it was just like the first song, I've Had Enough. They're like, whoa! Like, it punches you right in the face. So around that time, they put out a concert video, Kiss Animalize Live and Uncensored, which I still have and love. And again, Heavens on Fire video's out. I get the videotape, I put it in, I'm like, who's this guy? Another new guy. There's Bruce Kulick's playing. Who the hell's this guy? It's like it was just all these new faces. What I love about that concert video is how fast they play the songs.
Cold Gin.
They like thrash out every single Kiss song on there. They're playing them at 100 miles an hour. It's weird.
Well, in retrospect, there is a lot of criticism for them doing that, for them playing the songs.
And self-criticism.
Yeah, at that tempo. But again, they're playing those songs to appease the early 80s rock fans who were listening to Iron Maiden, and Metallica.
And everything else that was out at the time.
Yeah, and everything else was coming out that was played at, the new Judas Priest. I mean, the new wave of British heavy metal, all those guys, the tempos were a lot faster.
Right.
And so they were trying to, I think, appease, those fans and, garner those new fans, which they did on some level.
Eric Carr was like on a treadmill on that, That's when I realized, too, just how good Eric Carr was. Because I didn't buy Creatures and I didn't buy Lick It Up, and Animalize was kind of my reintroduction to Kiss again, and the drumming on Animalize is there. Like, nothing really jumped out, but when I saw that concert, I was like, "Holy crap, this guy's awesome!" I loved Eric Carr.
My memories of that were, a whole different world back then, right? MTV would play that. The concert video was like 90 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
But MTV would play it in an hour with commercials, and they would rerun it all the time. So they would cut out, some songs and some banter and all that, and fit it into an hour with commercials. And again, I was like 13 or 14. I had no job or no money. So I recorded it, again, on VHS off of MTV and just watched it until, I got a little bit older and I started to have a job. Then I bought the VHS, So that's like how we were doing stuff then, where kids now have no idea what we're talking about.
Right. I bought the VHS at Record Town when I bought Animalize.
Right.
I bought the record and the video. It was my way of getting back into Kiss. I actually bought the cassette of Animalize, not the record.
I feel like that's when I really became a Kiss fan. Becoming better friends with you guys. You're like a 13-year-old then. It's just, I knew some songs before then, but it's like that's when I really became a Kiss fan.
Yeah, me too. And I thought that was an amazing concert. When you look at it now, the production value is thin I mean, the stage show itself was thin. I mean, I know they had to light it all up for video, especially with the tube cameras at the time. You had to light everything up, but there were no real explosions. They're not with anything they were known for wasn't really in there.
Right. To your point before about the trend jumping, I didn't like that during those years. Paul's telling these 10-minute stories between songs.
Oh my God! Yeah,
full of filth and F words and innuendo, and he was just doing that because other people were doing it. And now we've read, I started doing that because our competitors at the time, well, do what you do great and what your audience wanted, and then that was a lot of their missteps, was trying to. Well,
in his defense, what they did great wasn't working anymore.
Right.
And I think they were really trying to figure out what to do. They were in this mode of reinvention because everything they had done the decade previous fell flat, and they were basically going out of business.
Oh, the Love Gun story on Live and Uncensored is amazing.
It's definitely entertaining. You're not going to see it now, though.
That and the what's the other one about Gene's baby?
Yeah, for If It's Like a Glove, I think.
Eric Carr's built like a man.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Paul.
It was all over sexualized.
Gross.
Again, target audience, teenage and college-aged males.
Yep.
That's who they were going for. That's who was buying this stuff at the time. So anyway, they follow up on Animalize with Asylum, which is around the time I met you, Mike.
Right.
Yeah.
And we all became friends. And
you saw the tour.
Yeah, I saw the tour in New Haven.
So did I.
You did too.
And I just remember another outtake kicks the album off. Eric Carr doing a warm-up.
Right.
Ends up the intro to King of the Mountain.
Right.
And
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's another one of these, hey, that sounds cool, let's throw it in. He was just getting warmed up. What are your impressions of Asylum?
Yeah.
Forget the neon clothes.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like we said before that the last. Animalize was still more metal, even though it wasn't as good as the two before. And this is where they really jumped off from metal to like playing like pop metal or pop rock for the kids, and then they're dressed that way as well, and all the imagery is that way as well. And I get it because that's what was popular then. I do think that, like I said, this was the first in the series of the next 3 or 4 albums that weren't very good in my opinion, especially in retrospect now. Like back then as a 13 or 14-year-old, I was much more into them. If I listen to them now, I'm like, oof, this does not sound good now in 2020. And I think it was a time period through those albums, multiple things were happening. Gene's not paying attention at all. Every song Gene's writing is about sex. This is when Paul started a trend of all night, when your walls come down, bang, bang you, let's put the X in sex, read my body, take it off. These just awful, I'm sorry. I know there's fans out there who love these songs. And I'll listen to them and like them because I like Kiss. But if I didn't like Kiss and I brought that song and said, you got to like Kiss, listen to Take It Off, that person's going to go, dude, what? So he started that whole, so now Gene is basically out of the picture, not writing good songs. The demon has left the building completely.
Yeah, the demon.
So there's no demon at all until Unholy came. And, you went from a guy singing on Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up about, again, not for the innocent, young, and wasted rock and roll hell war machine, to Cadillac fucking Dreams. Okay? And Love's Like a Slap in the Face. It was just, and then you got Paul with the other songs I'm talking about that are almost unlistenable during that period, some of that stuff. So my point before was, you got that time where you're just going to pick through, there's good songs, and pull them out.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't translate now at all. Like I wouldn't listen to now.
Well, Paul was doing that in the 70s too. You look at I Want You, Take Me, Making Love, Love Gun.
I agree, but I also think it was less like
gratuitous.
Yeah, and it was less so like
the 80s.
Stupidly obvious,
the 80s were. Look
There's
at
more
White Snake had a woman crawling all over their car, right. And that's the way it was. So, George, what are your impressions of Asylum?
I think the way Creatures and Lick It Up are cousins.
Yeah.
Asylum and Animalize are. Asylum is just a little less heavy. Mm-hmm. I love the Gene songs. I love Cyclically Cool. Any Way You Slice It, Trial by Fire. I think those are very good Gene songs.
Listen, I've had Love's a Deadly Weapon in my head for 2 days, so I listened to it leading up to this, and so I
like Asylum. I think it's pretty solid. Yeah, it does have a little more spit polish on it, and it's a little. They ratcheted down. It's thinner guitars. They took the crunch out of it, but most of the stuff on there is written really well. I think. I mean, All Night is ridiculous, but.
Desmond Child.
I mean, Bruce.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Bruce's presence was immediately no. And again, we were that age. I didn't recognize it. Now it's all in retrospect. Where,
yeah.
Bruce's solo on "Tears Are Falling" is one of the best
Oh my
non-makeup, or maybe the best non-makeup solo ever.
Yeah.
And I also think the "Who Wants to Be Lonely" solo rules, and "Who Wants to Be Lonely" is one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Kiss songs, period.
Yeah.
And it came off of that album. So there's a lot of stuff on that album that is worthy of it being there. Yes.
I like King of the Mountain too. And you're right about Bruce's solo. They just added it to their set just before COVID hit. And I saw them on the new leg of the U.S. tour. It was the first night. And they put that back in. And yeah, when that solo comes up, it's especially live, there's something really, I don't know, there's that song, for whatever reason, maybe it's because when we all became friends, that when I hear stuff off Asylum, it has a different kind of emotional impact on me.
I was in my room with that album, man, and that album cover, playing the vinyl over and over again. I had multiple Asylum themed posters in my room. I was all about it at the time.
I just pulled out, and I should have brought it with me, because it's like this big, because I was little in high school. My Asylum tour shirt I got. I still have it. It's the baseball shirt. Probably wouldn't fit a dog now, but
and that tour was interesting. That's when they started only on that tour. I think that they started playing some cover songs, which was an interesting approach with "Whole Lotta Love" from Led Zeppelin.
Right.
"Won't Get Fooled Again," which I saw from the Who.
Right.
They were playing "Hey Joe."
Really?
Yeah, "Hey Joe" and "Sunshine of Your Love." Like all four of those were spread out throughout the tour, and they all different. Eric Carr sang a lot of the stuff, I think, when they were doing it. Like "Won't Get Fooled Again," they did a verse each. I think "Hey Joe," Gene sang "Hey Joe."
Wow.
I'm pretty sure. But that's the first time they did that, and they never did it again. And I thought that was it's interesting, and it was either the last song or the second to last song of the set on that tour was a classic 60s cover, yeah.
And they broke out that giant Kiss sign. This thing was floor to ceiling.
The 40-footer.
It was unbelievable. Because up to that point, they were using the one from the 70s over and over and over again, which in the 70s, nobody had a big logo like that. So Asylum does pretty well. Doesn't sell as well as the previous two, but it does okay. Tour does okay, and then they come right out with Crazy Nights. Actually, before we go to Crazy Nights, though, they started putting out home videos around that time.
Yes.
Kiss Exposed, I believe, was the first one.
Correct.
Which is, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it's gross. It was supposed to be like all this wacky backstage madness, or see Kiss in their natural habitat, and it was just stagey, poorly written, again with the
phony baloney stuff
and the thematic, like, oh look, Paul's in bed with 8 girls, and it was just gross.
I must have watched that thing 3,000 times.
We go to your house and watch it. Yeah,
it's on a constant loop.
You think back now, and it's like, God.
I remember really liking
the
interviews with Gene and Paul when they were talking about the old days. It was
that was the good part of it.
That was the good part, yeah.
When they talked about like playing Beatles songs on the corner and stuff like that.
Yeah, when they were actually
Stanley, how you doing?
Right, when they were actually being serious about it, right? Instead of it being all like a joke.
The stagey,
when they were really talking about influences in the beginnings, and that's what you wanted to hear,
Yeah.
And what bothers me about the video more than anything is that Eric and Bruce are muzzled. They're barely in it at all, and Eric's like their houseboy or something. Like he's in the the stagey part of the video. It's like, oh, Eric lives in the attic, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it was definitely for the times and of the times.
Yeah. So out comes Crazy Nights, which almost cost Kiss my fandom again. I couldn't believe what a shit show of an album that is, and to this day I think it's the worst Kiss album. It's the worst.
I want to hear George's feelings.
Yeah,
I don't want to be taking all the airtime here. George,
I just remember us driving. I remember the first time listening to that in the car, driving and just thinking, what is this? It's definitely in the bottom 3 or 2.
Now, apparently they waited almost 2 years to make it because they were waiting for Ron Nevison to become available. Yeah. He'd produced Heart, which had a mega album. He produced Ozzy.
That's right.
With
The Ultimate Sin.
The Ultimate Sin, which was a huge hit.
Shot in the dark.
Right. And now he comes to Kiss, and he brings to Kiss what he brought to the other two bands: spit, shine, polish, and keyboards.
It's so funny, you know, what you said about it being maybe the worst. I mean, you know, I think there's 4 albums that I always kind of pile together with controversy. You know, The Elder, Crazy Nights, Carnival of Souls. And Unmasked, I think, are the ones that I always look at, like, you know, these are the ones that people, you know, tend to see so un-Kiss-like.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I first heard Crazy, Crazy Nights, the first notes, I said to myself, and then I was, I don't know, 15 or 16, I said, what in God's name is this? And to your point, I was like, I was into a million other things at the time, so I moved on. Guess I'm done with these guys. It's a bummer.
Yeah, I was so upset. I mean, you're right. The first couple notes of the song Crazy, Crazy Nights, that thin guitar. I mean, could you neuter Bruce any more than that?
And the irony of it is a huge hit in the UK. It restarted their careers in the UK where they were playing festivals and stuff because that song was so popular over there.
They started playing it on this farewell tour, and they replaced Do You Love Me with Crazy Nights, and it's awful. The crowd goes flat. Nobody likes that song. And, you know, it's funny about it because it's supposed to be, you know, we're wild and crazy, and it's the most blasé, boring, formulated crap of a song. You know, there's just nothing. It's not rock and roll all night. You know,
If I held,
tell us how you really feel, George.
If I held to hold you is really the only song on that album at this point now that I would still listen to, and I tried to listen to the album recently because we're doing this stuff, and it's tough. And even you go back to the Gene songs, and you're still in that arena of just not Gene. It's like a Gene imposter. And, you know, you get Bang Bang You, When Your Walls Come Down. I mean, this stuff is rough, man.
No.
Yeah, what's with the Bang Bang You, no. Like, what is this? Were they even trying anymore? It's just, I mean, Reason to Live is, if that was a song written by anybody else or recorded by anybody else, it's not, I wouldn't hate it. I mean, it's just not a Kiss song.
I can get into it once in a while.
Sure. I mean, like
know?
I said, as a song, if someone else recorded it, it would be okay. I mean, it'd be good, but it just doesn't. It's not a Kiss song. It's just
no.
Go put Rock and Roll Over on, and then put on Crazy Nights, and go, holy shit.
It's funny. It's funny when you look at that era in the '80s, and you go from, you know, when we talk about again Creatures and Lick It Up. So the same band that started off an album 5 years earlier with Creatures of the Night, that song. 5 years later, starting off an album with Crazy Crazy Nights. and you're talking about in 5 years, everything changing.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's another quick point I wanted to make was if you look back at, you know, just the business then, of course.
Yeah.
People are churning out albums every 15 minutes and touring their brains out. If you go back and if Kiss had more of an approach like Van Halen or some other bands, and I think it was 8 albums that I counted, 7 or 8 albums in the 80s that were put out by the band, by Kiss. If they put out 4 albums instead of 8 albums, and they cut off 3 or 4 albums worth of filler
crap,
and they said Kiss put out 4 really good albums in the 80s instead of a couple of really good albums and then 5
clunkers.
Yeah, you know, and you know, now that's what everybody does. I mean, if it's not a good song, it's not making it. And then it was just, you know, we got to fill up the album. It was a whole different approach and a whole different life. So I can't blame them either for it. If they had 3 years in between to write, you know, craft a great album, but they needed to make money. I know that they weren't in financial, you know, having a lot of financial success anymore after Dynasty and Mast and The Elder. So they had to put them out, and they had to get in the road.
Yeah, yeah.
So really, it was put the album out so we can go tour and we can make a living, right? So a lot of the songs that were put on these albums, it wasn't like they were, you know, pining over the bridge for the last 6 months.
I think that the trends were moving so fast that in the 80s too. So, you know, they get on board with the keyboard sound, right? But the keyboard thing was in vogue 2 years earlier. You know, Sammy Hagar joins Van Halen in 1986 and gives you this pop rock melodic full of keyboards, but yet still had an edge to it. And then Ozzy did it. And then, but by the time Kiss recorded Crazy Nights and got it out there, we were on to Guns N' Roses. Right, the Raw had come back, Whitesnake. Like all of a sudden, it flips, and now it's about big, loud guitars again, and they're out there with the prancy keyboards.
Right, and
they were late on that trend.
Yeah, during that period, it seemed like they were always late on the trend. That was the problem.
Right,
they were jumping on something that was, and then by the time they got it out, it was over.
It was over.
And again, not being, them being leaders in the '70s is why they were great.
Right,
they did what they wanted to do, and they thought people wanted to see and hear, and then they started doing what they thought would sell.
Right. Well, we keep talking about them chasing trends and chasing Bon Jovi, and I think that a lot of it might have been, a little, for lack of a better term, low self-esteem, because 5 years earlier they were on the verge of going completely bankrupt and being over. So I think they were afraid to be trendsetters, and they just said, let's do what's safe and do what everybody else is doing and just survive. Right. They kind of figured the days of being out in front and leading were kind of over, especially with Gene not participating. It was Paul. Right. On his own, and he's got this rotating cast of guitar players. It was just a mess at the time. But here's what bothers me more than anything, is that they follow up that faceplant of an album with a greatest hits album that has 2 new songs on it, and they continue the trend
those 2 songs
of horrible. Those 2 songs are abysmal.
Well, that's what I'm saying about well, that's what I'm saying about Paul during that period, is just like, again, Gene's not existent, and now Paul's writing songs like this again and I think he felt like he had to write songs like this to keep them popular and going. If he wrote serious rock songs, nobody wanted to hear it then. Everybody wanted to hear stuff like that. And X and Sex is a cool thing, not a cool thing, but it's a catchy thing, and people could say, and that's what these guys are thinking about at that time. They're not thinking about, writing, critically acclaimed, progressive rock songs or something. You know what I mean?
True, but here we are. It's 1988 now. Guns N' Roses has been out for a year, and they're a huge mega hit. The Whitesnake '87 album is blowing up. And they come out with another prancy couple of keyboardy songs that were probably filler from Crazy Nights that got dropped.
Awful.
Let's put the X and Sex.
Yeah, let's put the X and Sex and You Make Me Rock Hard.
Smashes, trashes, and hits.
Smashes, thrashes, and hits.
That whole compilation was not great anyway. Changing the songs, I don't like when you change the songs off the albums to begin with, so they re-edited and remixed the songs.
Yes.
I don't like anybody but Peter Criss singing his song. It's stupid. I thought that wasn't cool at the time. I felt differently.
Yeah.
Because I loved Eric Carr and I wasn't a great Peter Criss fan. Now, as a full-fledged adult, with a little bit of maturity, I could see how that was just a piss poor move in my opinion.
But I do like the remix of Love Gun because they don't step on Ace's solo.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They split the vocals off and extended the song a little bit, and I like that better. And I think the Detroit Rock City remix is a little bit better too.
Cutting off the front of that is, if you want to just get to the song.
And they added You're Gonna Lose Your Mind in Detroit Rock City a second time in the song.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so it was what it was. I think Deuce sounded cleaner.
And they ruined I Love It Loud.
And they ruined I Love It Loud. Yeah. We talked about that last time. They took all that reverb out of the drum kit.
It's awful. The whole point of the album Creatures of the Night is to get your head blown off by the drum.
Exactly.
And if you don't like the sound, don't listen to it. People who say that they don't like the drum sound on the album, sorry, because it's a hugely important thing for us fans and for the band, and really for that little piece of rock music, the way that sounds, and to just remove it is ridiculous.
So, I Love It Loud doesn't even sound right live because of that.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's just...
It doesn't sound good live.
No.
It doesn't have the same impact.
No. So, my Kiss fandom is teetering by a thread. I didn't even go to see him on the Crazy Nights tour. You guys did, right?
George did.
That's right.
I didn't. George did.
Ted Nugent opened up.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to go listen to these songs.
And plus, the tour. I didn't see it, but all accounts, the tour sucked. They played 75 minutes, 13 songs or something, and
mostly solos.
And fan accounts I read, it was blatantly obvious that they were uninspired. The stage show. They were trying to save and make money, I'm sure, but the stage show was thin. It was all thin. They brought in, I think it's Gary Corbett who played keyboards.
Yeah.
Who I've read a lot of interviews with him about the whole era. Where he was brought in and brought off. They had such little money at the time, or they were managing the money at the time, where Gary Corbett would come and play for 10 shows, and they would say, Gary, we don't need you for these next 5, go home. And then they call him back.
Yeah.
And so he'd fly home, and he'd come back, we want you for these 5. That's how they were pinching money at the time, because things were tight, that they had a keyboard player playing behind the scenes, not on the stage in front of the band, and they would send him and summons him back and forth because they didn't want to pay him.
Right. And they had the whole body glove look. Paul had that little Steinberg guitar, and they were again with the trends, and they were like 2 years behind, and I think they were faking it pretty well, though, that they were still a top act. They were still in all the magazines and stuff, and it made. I guess you were there. You tell us.
I can't remember much. I remember Gene's bass solo, and he's shooting stuff out of his guitar.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, what is this?
That's in the Crazy Nights video where he's shooting the things out of the headstock.
I really can't. That was the first time I saw Kiss, and that's so long ago. I remember. All I remember is Ted Nugent screaming.
He goes to a Kiss concert, and all he remembers is Ted Nugent.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
think that's emblematic of the time. Then
I didn't like it. That's great.
Yeah, no, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. You know what the funny thing though is about them at that time is that, and you mentioned MTV before, but MTV at that time was such a huge. I mean, MTV.
They were playing the shit out of them.
Yeah, MTV is really all that mattered then for the kids, right? They were buying the stuff. So, and Kiss, Tears Are Falling, Heaven's on Fire, even.
Who Wants to Be Lonely?
Reason to Live.
All Night.
Yeah.
Reason to Live.
I mean, the big ones though, like
Turn
Reason
on the
to
Night.
Yeah, but the big ones like Reason to Live and Tears Are Falling, those songs were like huge on MTV.
No, they were.
They had the dial MTV, and like every day they were like 2 or 1. Kiss, Reason to Live was battling with Def Leppard's Hysteria for the #1 spot on dial MTV. I clearly remember this, and Def Leppard's Hysteria sold like 20 million copies, and Crazy Nights was lucky to sell any copies. Yeah. So how the videos were doing that, it's interesting of how that worked. Like, you know what I mean? Like who was pumping it up on MTV? Who was calling constantly to get
Paul Stanley. Paul was hitting redial.
No.
I mean, Def Leppard, that album at the time was really like the album.
Yeah, it was.
And then these guys are rivaling them on MTV, and people watching it go, I don't even know this Kiss album.
And not to digress, but there you go again. There's a band who Def Leppard completely went from a raw band to a completely polished pop band. Yeah. I was done with them too. Yeah. So we thought the worst was behind us, but oh no, Kiss was ready to lay another egg. Much like the Dynasty Unmasked Elder trilogy, now we get the Crazy Nights, Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, and Hot in the Shade trilogy. So it's Hot in the Shade lands, and at the time, I remember, fellas, we all thought it was great. We thought it was back to basics rock and roll.
Yeah.
But it's not. I mean, you come out, Rise to It, decent song. And then you got Hide Your Heart, which was a big hit, but... And then, of course, they have the single Forever, which was...
Huge hit.
Huge hit. And, that's not horrible. It's a power ballad that came from that era. I mean, it's emblematic of the time, but...
Right, everybody then had to have one.
Right. But the album has like 15 or 16 songs on it.
Which
it's
is
just
unusual.
Full of stuff that they clearly picked up off the floor from previous efforts. They were like, well, let's just take all this stuff that we didn't record last time and record it this time and just throw an album out. Had one of the worst covers of all time, the Sphinx with the sunglasses on. Like their logo is like a little... It's like one of those mail stamps, and their logo on the album is like this big.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't even know it was them, really.
The Diamond in the Rough is definitely Little Caesar. Great, great song. Why they didn't let Eric Carr sing more often is ridiculous.
He was a good singer, no doubt.
Yeah, he was. It's kind of funny how Kiss has the 3 drummers in Kiss have all had that great whiskey voice. All 3 of them have like the same voice.
Yeah.
The 2 Erics and
You're
Peter. Right. Maybe it's when they put the ad in Rolling Stone or something, it says must have whiskey voice,
The funny thing about Hot in the Shade is, it was, to your point, Keith, it was a big step up from Crazy Nights, in my opinion.
That's probably because the keyboards were gone.
Right. Even though it was so much less produced, but it was much more like rock song album.
Songs were better, yeah.
Yeah, the songs were better, and it was more of a rock and roll album versus, a pop album. But yeah, I mean, if you took that album, first of all, Bruce Kulick has said, again, I'm just recalling everything I've read or heard in my life, so I'm sure half of it's wrong, but Bruce Kulick has said this is basically just demos. I mean, the album...
It sounds like demos.
Yeah, it's just demos. Like, there wasn't any real production done here. And so, if you took that album and you took the 10 best songs, cut off the 5 or 6 worst or whatever, and produced it with an outside person steering it, and having a really, a more of a crunchy or thick or you know, a good sound, and then cut off a lot of the, you know, crappy songs.
Maybe double track the vocals a little bit.
It would probably be,
like
yeah, it'd be a significantly better album and a better listen, because honestly, and most of the Paul songs on there, I think, are still decent songs. They're just not finished or done right.
Yeah, and I didn't realize, and I'll plug the book, Take It Off,
Yes.
Kiss Truly Unmasked, by Greg Prado. Definitely worth a buy. And in that book, it mentions that the Gene songs are click track. It's not even Eric Carr. It's a drum machine playing on that. And you can tell, like, I never realized it, and I went back and listened to Hot in the Shade after I read that book, and you can tell. There are no fills. It just keeps time.
It is bad.
Like, Love's a Slap in the Face, it's just a machine playing the drums. Yeah, I mean...
There's not one Gene
again,
song like that.
because they were not flushed with cash, they go and self-produce
Right.
Hot in the Shade, and they put out, yeah, it sounds like a work in progress,
Right.
basically.
Well, they got super, like, again, they found lightning in a bottle and got lucky with Forever. It changed everything.
Forever put them back on the charts. The tour was highly successful
Yeah, because of that song.
because of that song.
that song.
And we all went to that tour. I think I saw 3 shows with you.
A bunch of times I went. Yeah, I think I saw 4 total maybe on that tour.
Yeah, we did the Springfield, New Haven, and Madison Square Garden, that was the best, when your buddy got us on the floor because he looked like Gene Simmons. And that was awesome.
And I saw Worcester with him. That was my 4th.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I mean, you went with Jack. But that tour was amazing.
Yeah.
That tour, like, to me, the album, I got tired of that album quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was better when we first got it, but I got tired of it quickly because it just wasn't very good. But that tour, when they integrated so much of the old material back in, opened the show with I Stole Your Love and Deuce. You know, and just kind of went back to what they do best.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. I mean, and at that time in my life too, it was a perfect fit. It was, you know, it was great. You know, the fact that they were able to sustain and put on shows at that level with that type of production,
Right.
and with that many songs being played and that quality of musicianship. I mean, the band was beyond tight at that point, and the shows were great, and pretty much the set list was great. I mean, it was just a great show, and I mean, I've done a lot of stuff in the last 30 years with music, tons of shows, tons of everything, all over the place. But that tour was, you know, was special, definitely.
I think it was special for us as a group of friends.
Definitely,
too.
and as a fan of the band, yes.
Right. And your dad helped get us backstage to the New
Right.
Haven show, and we got to meet them, except for Paul because he had broken his ribs and
Yep.
he's being taped up. But that was when.
And Gene bypassed us.
Well, yeah, he was.
Because there were good-looking girls behind us, and
He gave us.
totally didn't even see us.
He
there.
gave us 15 seconds of his attention.
Gene over here.
But I remember 2 things about backstage. I remember you and Bruce Kulick. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
What'd you say to him?
I asked, "Are you excited for the show?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am." And I'm like, "Really?"
You laughed at him.
I was like, "Really?"
You got him upset. He was like, "No, why are you laughing at me? I'm serious."
There's 10,000 people out there that want to see me. I'm excited.
And the other thing I remember is after we met them and got our signed picture, they signed our stuff. We were walking back out to the floor because we had the pre-show passes, and someone chased me down and tapped me on the shoulder as we were about to go back up the stairs to our seats. And I turned around, it was Eric Carr. He chased me back out to the floor because he had the cap to my Sharpie.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Jesus.
And he goes, "Hey man, you forgot the cap to your Sharpie." And I was like, "You can have the pen." Really?
Right.
Like that, I'll never forget that because that showed who Eric Carr was as a human being. Just that simple act that he was like, "Oh no, I stole this guy's
Pen cap.
his Sharpie cap. His marker's going to dry out on him. Oh shit."
Right.
And chased me down. Like, that's pretty cool. I'll never forget that.
I think I was like 20 years old at that show. And I remember saying that, you know, when I was, you know, so into Kiss for several years, and I said to Eric when we met him back there, "Eric, man, you're fucking awesome." And he was like, you know,
Yeah.
didn't like, you know, yeah. And he was like, you know, stop it, kind of.
Yeah, very humble.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was cool. Yeah.
Everybody I've encountered who has had a brush with Eric Carr, be it in a bar or backstage, they all said he was just a regular Joe, just a regular guy who, you know, fell into shit and appreciated it, appreciated where he landed in life. And, you know, we didn't know at the time, but he had a serious health problem. Right. You and I were at his last show ever at Madison Square Garden. Yep. And I remember that, too. At the end of his drum solo, flames would shoot up around there were 4 corners, you know, would shoot up around his kit. And one of them didn't go, malfunctioned. Oh. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And that was his last show ever. And we didn't know because he had heart cancer and died in '91. So that was horrible.
And the way that whole thing played out, I mean, I think there's so much to that story that nobody really knows. You know, Paul and Gene being not allowed at the service, and because they didn't handle it the way the family wanted them to handle it concerning, you know, his illness and the band keeping going. And, you know, I think you can read all the accounts of it and you can understand all sides. I mean, these guys are a business. It's like, you know, if something happened, you're just not going to make any money for the next 3 years. I mean, you have to feed yourself and your family. And man, I loved Eric Carr more than anybody in the world. But what, you know, what are these guys supposed to do? But by several accounts, they handled it horribly, and by their account, they maybe didn't. Yeah. But who knows what the real story is in the middle somewhere? You know. Yeah.
Eddie Trunks alluded to the fact that Eric's days in Kiss might have been numbered anyway. Just for the fact that they weren't really seeing eye to eye anymore.
Well, when you read Paul's book, it was shocking.
Yeah.
What was going on with Eric and Paul in the late '80s and early '90s, and that they weren't speaking, and you know the tour that we're talking about, Hide in the Shade. I mean, it was just a shit show between the two of them.
Right.
Eric was mad at Paul, and Paul wasn't talking to Eric. And
right.
I don't even know what the story is. What?
It seemed like Eric had one of these personalities where he needed constant
stroking.
Yeah,
accolades on some level.
He needed affirmation that he was okay and doing a good job. Like I think he doubted himself a lot.
Very insecure, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Paul would always say that, you know, he just couldn't get past the point that he wasn't the original member of the band, and he was insecure his whole time because
chasing
he
Peter
wasn't,
Criss, right?
Because he wasn't an original member. And then I think it was Crazy Nights, George. I think it was the tour that you saw where Paul cut or wanted to cut his drum solo out of the concert, and that's when things went down a bad road. But you read the book. I mean, it's in the book if you go back and look at it again. Yeah. But that's what I remember from it. Paul wanted to cut his drum solo, and then from then till I think the end, it was a rocky road with those guys.
I think Eric was walking on eggshells for years, and he probably wouldn't have lasted past Revenge anyway. You know, you listen to Eddie Trunk, who knew Eric very well, and that's the feeling he gets from it.
I heard one story that Ace wanted him on Trouble Walking for Eric to play on it, and Gene or Paul wouldn't let him do that.
That's right.
Yeah, of course.
That's right. Which makes no sense. So, like, why? Why can't you let him go do a guest spot with somebody else? You know, was it because it was Ace? Would they have let him go with somebody else? Who knows? But
the same album where Ace covered Hide Your Heart, which is strange.
Yeah. Right.
Why did you cover Hide Your Heart?
There was weird stuff going on in the late 80s, early 90s. It was very bizarre.
Yeah.
So what gets lost in Eric's death, though, is it happened on the same day as Freddie Mercury.
Oh, yeah.
So MTV does this whole, like, they have their half-hour news thing, and in 25 minutes of it's Freddie Mercury, and then they go, oh, by the way, Eric Carr died, too. Right. Yeah, on to our premiere video. And, you know, it was sad that he got an, oh, by the way.
MTV's relationship with Kiss was always interesting to me. You know, during those 80s years when Paul Stanley was marketable for them, you know, he was always doing guest spots and guest VJ spots, and you know, and like I said, their videos were in constant rotation. So Eric and his big hair and his big drums were always in the middle of everything. But then by '91, it wasn't cool anymore, and obviously Freddie Mercury is a huge icon. So you can't even it's Kiss's replacement drummer. So I mean, you can't really compare.
Right. But as Kiss fans, we know Eric Carr was so vital to them.
Right.
And aside from Paul, who was completely engaged throughout the 80s, Eric might have been the only other guy in Kiss totally plugged in at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Consistently, right.
You know, I don't think Bruce felt like he ever had much of a voice until their next album, Revenge. I think up to that point, Bruce was an employee, and he contributed, but I don't think he ever felt like he was really part of it yet. It seemed like he was going through these growing pains for quite a while.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a distinct voice until Revenge, I think. I think in Revenge they finally said, let's take the handcuffs off Bruce and let him be Bruce. And it showed. Now, in the same time Revenge comes out in '92, you have the grunge era is already coming out.
Yeah.
So once again, they're 2 years behind.
Right.
Now, to us, Revenge was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
It was like, it sounded like Rock and Roll Over or Love Gun. It was like, oh, yes. And they went back to Bob Ezrin, but Bob Ezrin didn't do a Bob Ezrin job on it.
Right.
Bob Ezrin made a rock record.
Yeah.
I do feel, though, I mean, and I know that, and there's a lot of fans out there who, it's another polarizing record. I mean, there's a lot of fans out there, especially at the time, thought it was return to form and wonderful. And now
I was one of them.
And now as an older person, I go back and listen to it and go,
no, I know.
Most of this really isn't that good.
No, it's not.
There's some huge highs, but again, like the lyrics and the themes are pathetic, and I don't want to hear that stuff. It's weak. Unholy is one of the best Kiss songs ever.
Yes.
And best Gene songs ever.
Yeah.
One of the best, and so that really is the mark of the album. Because the rest of it, to me, there's a few other decent songs, and then after that, it's a lot of filler again.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of bad lyrical, I mean, just cringe-worthy lyrics that I'm like, ugh.
Well, again, they're doing 1989 in 1992.
Right.
I agree with you. Unholy I think it should be in their set list now.
It should always.
I Love It Loud out of there.
It should always have been in the set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Revenge comes out, and again, they do this weird thing where Eric Carr's in the video for God Gave Rock and Roll to You, because they'd written that for the Bill and Ted soundtrack. But then the album comes out, and there's a different drummer. It's Eric Singer. And we had already known Eric Carr was passed at that point. So
yeah.
It was a strange departure for Kiss, because up to that point, they always went for a guy who had a certain look. 6'2", thick black hair. And now they get a guy who's 5'6", with long blonde hair, Eric Singer, who's a phenomenal drummer. I've known Eric from his days in Alice Cooper and Badlands and all those bands. He's a phenomenal drummer.
Yeah.
George, Revenge, what did you think?
Like you guys, I loved Unholy. I just wanna. It was a great Paul song, you know. Vinnie Vincent's back in the fold.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You know, they gave him another shot. I don't even know how it disintegrated after that. Like, what happened?
I don't know.
With
You know?
Vinny again.
Vinny became Vinny again. And I love the tribute, the Eric Carr jam, which is great. You know?
Yeah. Well, him and Bruce they were partnering, because Eric was putting out his own, he was working on a cartoon show before he died called The Rockheads.
Yep.
Rockheads.
And him and Bruce were recording demos for songs for the Rockheads. And I bought the Eric Carr EP that Bruce released right after he died. It's
I
got
have it
4
too.
songs on it.
It was like a sleeve, like a cardboard sleeve.
Right, cardboard sleeve. But there's another one out now. I forgot the name of it, but it's got like 12 songs. It's got more from him and Bruce. And I think Bruce actually went back in the studio and kind of polished it up, made it sound better than demos. I should get it. I've been meaning to, and I just keep forgetting.
Right.
But yeah, Bruce and Eric had a really close friendship, I think, and that was Bruce. Bruce wanted to get that on the record.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I'm not sure Gene and Paul would have done any kind of tribute to him otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said to you before, like unfortunately, we'll never know like the real truth.
Right.
Even if you speak to everybody involved, you're going to get their version of what they want you to know.
And Gene and Paul will say what they're supposed to say.
Yeah, I mean, what really happened and how was it really handled? It doesn't, it's so screwed up.
And it's a shame, because we like Gene and Paul, and we loved Eric Carr.
Right.
And to know that there was friction there makes me sad.
Yeah.
Because I get why there was friction with Ace and Peter and Vinny, but I don't understand how there could be friction with a guy like Eric Carr.
Yeah.
Well, again, like Paul will say, it goes back to Eric's,
insecurity,
own
neediness,
personality flaws and stuff.
Yeah.
And again, Paul has thousands of his own personality flaws too. So it's hard for people to.
Everyone has warts.
Yeah, and you're going to criticize, and the guy's past and all that. So it's.
I can say people who are in need of constant validation are exhausting.
It is exhausting, yes.
And they become psychological vampires. And, we're not living with that 365 like they were for a decade. That could maybe get tiresome.
It is.
So I'm sure if Eric was alive and they just released him from Kiss at some point, they would all still be friends, because sometimes just working together becomes a problem.
Right.
you know, I think it had just gotten to that point where the business relationship was failing.
Right.
But I don't think they disliked each other as people, because Eric Carr, from all accounts, everywhere you read, all over social media and stuff, anybody who's met the guy loved him.
What did Eric Carr say to Paul Stanley at his solo show? He's like, so this is the guy that's going to replace me in Kiss?
That's right. That's right. So Paul, which we didn't touch on with the Paul Stanley solo tour, but the Paul Stanley solo tour of smashes, thrashes, and hits time-ish.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, Eric Singer played drums on that tour with Bob Kulick, and the same keyboard player who I think it's Gary Corbett again, who was on the Crazy Nights tour. And yes, George is completely accurate. Where Eric was that insecure, Carr was upset that Paul didn't take it, and Paul's like, dude, it's a solo band. I'm not gonna take members of Kiss on a solo tour.
Right.
And Eric was angry that he didn't play on that tour, and then was saying yes to George's point that, you know, this guy's going to replace me, which he did. I don't think Eric thought he was going to pass away and replace him, but
right.
But that speaks to the, you know, there was a lot of insecurity there, which is sad. It's sad.
Yeah, that's too bad. But either way, R.I.P. Eric Carr. We loved you. We did.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Around that same time too, you had again, you know, just a barrage of home videos coming out.
Oh, right. They had Kiss Confidential.
Yeah, the Kiss, the Extreme Close-Up now, which did the 180 of Kiss Exposed, where Kiss Extreme Close-Up was all serious. And the real story of Kiss, with real interviews and real live performance, and it's a really, really good. I watched it, a lot, obviously, but it was a really good, career, encompassing, serious, documentary that they oversaw. And yeah, they had Confidential, and there was another one.
Kiss My Ass.
Yeah, Kiss My Ass. So
Kiss My Ass comes out with contemporary artists doing Kiss covers, people who were influenced by Kiss.
This is after
Revenge. And it was people like Lenny Kravitz and
Garth
Brooks and the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and all these kind of people doing
Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Toad, yeah, they all did a cover of a Kiss song in their style. These are bands that were all influenced by Kiss, and the video came out at the same time. And what I liked about the Kiss My Ass video is it had some of the old commercials for like the Kiss makeup kit and the Kiss dolls and stuff like that. But from the 70s, they had all those old commercials on there. And
there's a lot of good stuff on all those videos.
All those,
man.
Yeah. Now the one Extreme Close-Up, that's the one that had the Alive 3 live video woven into it, correct?
That's Confidential.
Oh, that's Confidential.
Yeah, Confidential was more of like a live concert.
That's the
video.
one. Okay.
And Extreme Close-Up was more of like a documentary.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So, because Kiss Alive 3 comes out in, 93? I loved it when it came out. The only thing, my quibble with it is that they had old songs in there, like Watching You and stuff like that. And up to that point, like Kiss Alive 2, they cut those songs out and recorded sound checks of stuff they didn't play live and faked it that it was live. Like Tomorrow and Tonight, and put that in there. Because they didn't want to repeat anything off Kiss Alive 1, and they broke that rule for Kiss Alive 3. And I thought that was kind of weird. I thought they should have done the same thing. Do some sound checks with stuff you'd never play live.
Yeah.
Just so we could hear a live rendition of some of their 80s stuff.
I mean, I'm sure the thought process with that is going to be, the old songs get people to buy the album, and the old songs played by new guys get people
Bruce
to buy the
and
album.
Eric, right.
Yeah.
The production on Kiss Alive 3 is so obviously faked in a studio. It's ridiculous. There's no way that's live.
No, you're right. And everybody, I mean, the album is panned across the board. People don't like the album, and they don't like it for this reason. I mean, it's not well thought of in any circle that I've ever heard.
When I first bought it, I loved it.
Of course. So
because it sounded so good.
Right.
But, it's obvious it's a studio album.
Well, in Revenge, too, when we talk about Hot in the Shade, the Revenge tour was awesome. It was too late because, like you said, other types of music were becoming more popular. Kiss was passé, yada yada.
The arena rock shows were dying.
Yeah, but I saw one Revenge show on the arena tour in Worcester, and it was awesome. And the set list was just as awesome as the Hot and the hits, the Hot in the Shade set list. Here they opened with Creatures,
right?
Which was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think it might have been, was it Creatures to Do Still?
Yes.
So they replaced I Stole Your Love with Creatures, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
So that was still awesome. But the tone around the band changed so much because of the change in the times, where everything was black, it was more negative. The Statue of Liberty was on stage, and the face of the Statue of Liberty would fall
Cracked off,
and it would be the skull behind it. So it was more
It was like an Iron Maiden stage show.
Yeah, it was more sign of the times, what was coming, versus the happy, poppy, glossy stuff that was not that long before.
Wow.
We saw, this is one of the best Kiss shows ever, and I bow to you. Thank you so much for taking me. Mike got it was invite only, to go see them play a club, a warm-up tour with Eric Singer. And we went to the Avalon in Boston, and oh my God, it was just incredible.
It was awesome. Incredible. So Revenge wasn't out yet, so it was a club promo tour, and anybody listening to this that's a maniac,
there was
knows.
200 people in there. It was small. It was an intimate little thing.
It was awesome. We haven't even heard, I don't think, any Revenge songs yet.
Just Unholy. I remember the video for Unholy was already out.
All right, so we're in the club and they're playing it, on the PA, and I'm like, these are new Kiss songs I never heard playing in the club before they come on. So that was pretty interesting,
Wow.
And it was great, and they just came out and they put their guitars on and just blasted you through the back wall. I found out recently that Paul Harriott was also at the show.
Oh, really?
And with his girlfriend at the time, Krista. And Paul was never a huge Kiss fan. He's like, they have some good stuff, but most of their stuff is, especially in the 80s, he thought was garbage. He, to this day, says that was one of the best concerts he's ever been to, was that Avalon show. And she taped it. She has a videotape of it. I've got to try to get from her.
I mean, those are the events that prove all the, the Kiss is all makeup and explosions.
Right.
I mean, it's just a good hard rock band.
Right.
That has makeup and explosions.
Right.
And during that time, they were uber talented. At that time, now you got Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer in the band.
Yeah.
And Paul is a serviceable rhythm guitar player and a great singer, and Gene is, I think, a decent rock bassist. He's not like he's, so now you got, a very talented band at their peak. We didn't even talk about, Paul singing in the 80s.
I can't believe you went there. I was just about to bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, Paul singing starting at, really at Creatures of the Night, through Carnival of Souls. I mean, the guy was in peak.
His vocal ability grew with each year. And I think by 92, that band was about as tight as they were running on all cylinders.
A lot of people will say that. I mean, they were playing stadium shows in South America. There's a ton of bootlegs going around, Sao Paulo and other cities. I have them, I think, still at home somewhere, where there was full pro shot bootlegs because of the videotapes that they were making, because what we said about Confidential and all those.
Right.
So there was tons of footage out there, and I would, was trading them online with people at the time with the way life was, and there was a lot of fans who will say that was the best and tightest version of the band ever, and nobody really cared in the United States.
Right.
But when you watched those concerts, I mean, the musicianship and the set list and the energy and all that stuff, they were freaking killing it, and it was short-lived. Because, again, the world kept changing.
Yeah, the world kept changing. And Revenge, when it came out, was just so refreshing. You're right. Looking back on it now, it's dated and it didn't age very well. To me, it seemed like they've once again reinvented themselves, and they were ready for bear. Along comes grunge, topples what we knew. It was weird. Like the 80s rock scene, like you went to bed on a Sunday night and you woke up Monday morning, and it was over.
And it was over.
It was like, throw all your records away because that's freaking garbage. It's gone. It happened that fast. It was weird. And for somebody like me, it was like punching me in the face. I couldn't process what was happening. And now I look back at the 90s stuff and I love it. But at the time, I was pissed off.
It's so funny, man.
Everything I thought was cool was not cool, overnight.
It's so funny. You're exactly like me. And I know a lot of other people that were able to make the transition at the time a lot better than I was. And
I couldn't do it.
I didn't do it either.
Yeah.
Really?
Into more, modern music. And now I'm the hugest fan of the entire era
of grunge.
And
yeah,
a billion
me too.
bands from it.
Me too.
I mean, but it took me a lot longer when there was people I knew at the time, and I give them credit, where they just said, one guy I know, his name is Paul as well, Paul Vasilko. He's a Russian who's a player, plays bass, a really good musician, really smart guy. And his words to me were, when I first saw and heard Soundgarden, I realized that stage moves were just not cool. And that was it. And he was able to quickly make the transition to going, wow, hair metal is not good, and this is better music, where our lives were so ingrained with it. I just couldn't say, oh, that's it. I'm done with this, and I'm on to Jeremy. I mean, that wasn't happening.
There was a sentimental reason behind it.
It's a whole different thing. It's a whole life.
It was our whole life through high school,
yes,
and our formative years and our friendships and our bonding. And you were telling me all of a sudden to throw it away.
Yeah, it's over. It sucks.
So it was the emotional impact more than the technical impact.
Correct.
Yeah.
For me. You know, I wasn't ready to put on a flannel shirt and grease my hair up and look at my sneakers.
Well, I wasn't ready to say that everything that we spent so much time, to your point, was crap.
Right.
I wasn't ready to say, I mean, that's not, you know, and I don't think that now still. I mean, I think now when I go back to that time, I can, you know, farm through a lot of the work that came out from a lot of bands and artists and find a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff still.
Yeah.
And that's from any era.
There's plenty of cringe from the 80s, but
right.
So Kiss copies the trend
way too late.
Again.
Kurt Cobain's already dead.
And they're in the studio. And they're recording. At the time, the album was called Head. Remember that? And the bootlegs had escaped, and there was a
firing head.
Someone holding a flaming skull. Like,
yes.
On the covers. I had one of the bootlegs.
Yeah, me too.
Gene tries to copy Unholy with a knockoff called Hate to open the album. But for whatever reason, the album that became Carnival of Souls sat on the shelf for a long time. And they went instead and did an MTV Unplugged special that was, to me, it showed just how good that band was musically. Like, when you saw Bruce, Eric, Paul, and Gene play that show, right there, it just showed just how tight they were, right. How it was clicking on all cylinders, how perfect that lineup had become. Right. And as popular as that had become, right. it pulled the rug right out from under everything.
It's so funny. I remember at that time, and we have to remember how things were so much different then. But I remember hearing that, you know, MTV was laughing, basically. You know, I got, you know, comments that you want to slap, you know, at the time. I'm sure it was, you know, the younglings running MTV and Kiss is over, and it's, you know, it's a joke. But a few years earlier, it's all that was on your TV station day and night was their videos on Dial MTV, like 2 years ago.
Right.
Like, Forever was the biggest thing ever. It was on nonstop. Now, you know, it was a joke. We're not having Kiss do the Unplugged unless the you know, original guys come. And, you know, I remember hearing one of them say, yeah, you know, there's two people at MTV that really gave a crap about this, you know, because it's not cool anymore.
Right.
You know, but
right.
two years ago, it was plenty cool when they were,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But also, again, a sign of the times where, you know, it's a different mindset now, you know, than it was then. So, you know, so they got Ace and Peter, and I think that they knew they had to do it in order to keep going. That, you know, it wasn't going to continue.
Right.
The 80s were over. Now what are we going to do?
Right.
Well, Peter played on the Unplugged thing.
The convention tour.
The convention
tour.
Yeah. Right.
Whose idea was it? It was Eric Singer's
supposedly Eric Singer, when they were in California, told Gene, hey, we should call down Peter and have him come sit in for a couple songs. And then they did, and then Eric Singer was out of the band after that.
Yeah.
You know?
It should be noted, and we'll definitely talk about it in part 3, Eric Singer was a lifelong Kiss fan.
Right.
And so is Tommy Thayer.
Right.
And I think that plays to why they're so successful in the band, but we'll get back to the Unplugged thing. Yeah, it's ironic. And again, you know, I was in my mid-20s when that happened, the Unplugged, and I was too naive to realize that that whole thing was staged with them.
Me too, 100%.
You know, they're like, oh, hey, look who's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, come play with us.
Yeah.
As they've been rehearsing for the last week.
Right, exactly.
And the reunion's never coming. Ace and Peter are going to go home, and then Bruce is going to go out and play these songs that nobody wants to hear from this new album, and these guys aren't going to go and kill the world, right? I mean, come on. But you're right, too naive.
Yeah, and I love that CD, and you know, you started hearing the rumblings on what was the very primitive internet at the time. You know, you'd go in these little chat rooms and boards and whatnot, and everybody's like, oh, Kiss is going to reunite and put the makeup back on. And I refused to believe that because, to me, they were perfect the way they were.
Well, you and I were together on that.
Yeah. And then they do the unveiling on the...
with Tupac.
With Tupac. And
awesome.
On the Music Awards. And I don't know about you guys, but at that point, I kind of thought, well, they're just going to do this for a year, and then they'll put Bruce and Eric back in and go on there.
It's, you know, I got to give Keith credit for admitting that, you know, to anybody who wants to hear it, because I was the same, and I wouldn't admit that unless you did now, but I was the same way, again, totally naive, thinking that, oh yeah, they're going to go out with these guys, make a ton of money, it's going to be awesome, and then they're going to put out another non-makeup album in 1999. I mean, now you look back and go, what were we thinking? How stupid are we?
Right.
You know what I mean? but that was my hope and thoughts. I didn't want to hear a new album with Peter Criss in 1998.
Right.
And I didn't, by the way. I heard some other guy playing, pretending like it was Peter Criss again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get back to the Unplugged. That album was like a breath of fresh air for me because Sure Knows Something is so great on that. See It Tonight. A World Without Heroes. And to me, the best performance of Beth is on that album.
My favorite version of God of Thunder was cut from that. Have you seen that?
Oh,
the country style?
The Texas one?
Yeah.
I agree with you, George. The set list made it worthy.
Coming Home.
Yeah, Coming Home. Because there were songs on there that, they played a lot of the classics for the, the everyday fan. But for us, there was a lot of stuff that...
Deep cuts.
Yeah, that was great. And Paul's vocals at the time were off the chart still.
The whole band, they looked great. And indicative, too, when they brought Ace and Peter out, how sickly Ace and Peter looked compared to the four guys in the current lineup, how healthy they looked.
Yeah.
And obviously they took better care of themselves.
Right.
We're going to bring out members of the family.
I remember I showed that part to my mom when Ace and Peter came back out. And I said, "This is Ace and Peter." And she went, "Oh, they look horrible. What's wrong with them?" They really didn't look good. But when they decided to reunite and put the makeup back on, it put Carnival of Souls on the shelf. And it took the fans pushing to get it finally released. Right. And again, it's an album that's more of a demo. It's not finished. But there's some great stuff on that album. I like it.
The album is so polarizing too, like I was saying before. Like again, you go to The Elder.
It's their
Crazy
Soundgarden.
Nights.
It's like an Alice in Chains album.
And Carnival of Souls. It's like one of those debating topics.
Yes, yeah.
I love the album.
So do
I.
I.
You really love the album.
I do.
Well, I mean, it's like it's the best album. First of all, since Asylum for me, since those albums, I mean, everything else was just not good. I know it's not Kiss, and I get that, but I love it.
I mean, I agree with you on that. It's definitely not Kiss, and you're not going to give somebody to say, "Hey, discover Kiss." As diehards like us, there's lots of stuff there that I can pull from it that I do really like. Yeah. And in retrospect, some of it I don't. I think In the Mirror is one of a lost classic.
Yeah.
But I remember our friend Mike Stanowitz. Mike, if you're out there, I remember our friend Mike Stanowitz going to me, "Dude, Kiss doesn't sing songs called Hate. This is bullshit. This is a copycat album, blah, 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 blah."
He's got a point.
Yeah, and it's barely any guitar solos, blah, 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 and he, crapped all over it. So,
right.
But yeah, so that's the other side,
The ballad that Paul wrote was great. I Will Be There.
I'll be there.
Yeah,
the steel guitar.
That's great.
Master and Slave is a phenomenal song. The Jungle is a great song.
Yeah, there's definitely some good songs on there.
Master and Slave. Paul's Scream.
Yeah, the Scream.
I like Childhood's End. I think that song's got a really emotional tone to it. For Gene,
I like. Is it I Confess or It's I Confess?
Yeah,
I
Confess.
That song a lot too, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a solid effort if it was produced, completed
4 years earlier
and released 4 years earlier.
Dude, by the time that album came out, the grunge copycats
was over.
The copycats were already almost over. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this was, it was done. It was already on to Limp Bizkit by then. I think.
Yeah, they put it. Yeah,
like we were already on to like rap metal. It was like way gone.
Yeah,
nobody cared anymore about.
Well, it was the Kiss fans that wanted it, and it came out in 97?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. By then, it was long.
It was over. Yeah.
So that's the first album of original material from 92 to 97.
Yeah.
That's like their biggest break.
Yeah.
Up to that point.
Right.
Well, I mean, it would have come out in like 94, but it kept getting pushed back.
Oh, I thought it was recorded like in.
It was recorded
96.
earlier, and it was definitely shelved for at least a year because of the reunion. But you had Kiss My Ass, and you had that You Wanted the Best, which was a combination.
Oh, I forgot about the You Wanted the Best.
Yeah, it was a combination of a Live 1 and a Live 2 with like a Jay Leno interview or something on it.
Which they put out just to appease because of the reunion. They were just quickly
sell more stuff with makeup on it.
Put something out with Ace and Peter on it. Yeah. So, but that leads into the next era of Kiss for our Volume 3, which is the reunion into the what people refer to as Scab Kiss years, where they have imposters.
Right.
In the Spaceman and Catman outfits.
D. Snyder's still really pissed off about it.
Is it?
A lot of people are. And until next time, for the Baron and for Yorgo, I will be Keith.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Gene, how you feeling tonight? You having yourselves a little good time, man? What's going on?
Rock and roll. When I was a little boy growing up in the hills of Tennessee, we didn't see many girls that we came from, so we became friendly with the farm animals. Maybe they'll play this segment on VH1, or maybe the Nashville channel. Jim Baker, anyone?
Giggler, man. They killed the Giggler! They had no business doing that. None.
I'm funny how? I mean funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you and make you laugh? What do you mean funny? Funny how? How am I funny? Funny how? I mean funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up below. Also, please subscribe to GeekTime TV. It really helps us grow the channel. And make sure you hit that bell icon in order to receive notifications every time we drop new content here. You can also check us out on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at GeekTimeNet. Thanks again for watching. We will see you soon.
Say, kids, what time is that?